before you watch this lovely video with Launders, you're going to notice something different when you get into the interview. Because I'm an idiot and I was super tired on the day, I failed to capture my webcam. I've learnt my lesson, but not in time to get it on there. So you'll see my logo instead. However, coming up will be a great interview along with Launders, who's going to give some insight into his career path up until this point, some of the more recent results from some of the big teams heading into the major, and a little bit of insight into the North American scene. Enjoy. Right, first off, thank you very much for just spending some time with me today. I hope you're doing well. I know you've been very, very busy, as you said. How's things, man, in between RMR to major now? Have you got anything planned other than just content, or?
Yeah, I wanted to take like some time to just do as much content as I can because when I leave, I just don't bring my travel setup with me anymore. So I'm gonna like prep all my YouTube content, probably Monday releases for the next month or so, and then just be able to focus on casting while I'm in Paris and do nothing but like tweet while I'm there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Right. So, right from the top, North American Counter Strike has it's been memed many a time. It's a time-honored tradition at this point. Does your time as like an IGL in the North American scene, and this is an exact stat from Liquipedia, your $463 of winnings. Has that helped you? Has that helped you still to this day when it comes to casting and understanding the game? And also during this time as like a North American IGL, were there any notable characteristics you saw in young players that helped them become better players in future?
Yeah, two great questions. Oh, I might ask you to refresh my memory after the first one. So, definitely playing. So, I think firstly, I'd say everybody learns a little differently, and so I can, from my experience, I know that there's no way I could analyze at the same level if I didn't have play time.
Mm,
I think the things that I learned as an IGL, the things I learned playing with certain different players, going through roster moves, going through practices, and just the game knowledge that I acquired by being in scrims and doing server time. I don't even understand how you could learn about the game without having some of that. So I really encourage people to like play a season of open, like try to build a team, like
mm,
get all of that experience because some people learn differently. There's like I'm a pet, obviously, who didn't have any playtime. He was Tarek's Twitch mod, and he was able to figure out how to analyze the game at a high level. And I'm sure there's other people that have done that, but for me, I couldn't see a world where I would have nearly the same level of information that I do because I was in IGL and played a little bit, even
sure.
if it was only at moderately high level.
So I know that I know a lot of young players out on like the FPLs. I know from some time trying out my own time in ESEA. I I know a former teammate I worked with said he like would reach out to you and you would reply. Do you get like a lot of young aspiring players like reach out to you? And are there any notable characteristics from these guys that are like that? Are there any hard set mindsets that you notice in people that go on to like that are transcendent through talented players in Counter
Oh, I
Strike?
see. Yeah, I can speak to the teammates that I played with more so than people that have messaged me because I
Sure.
only ever watched like one of their games at a time or anything like that. I've always wondered, which one of them has the right mindset to like to basically like win their season or get to pro, and it just you might see them later. And there are some players that have DM me that like when they became pro, they're like, yo, if you check our like DM, I messaged me when I was like an open, and I sent you a message, and that kind of thing is cool. When it comes to red threads in terms of personality traits or kinds of people that I see make it, I think in my last video I did about Stewie, I talked about his affect as a person who wants who wanted to like who wanted to like elevate his level. And I think that definitely more than most anybody else that I knew, he not only had the talent, but he was constantly talking to people all the time. And I think that one thing I see with a lot of young teams is they don't do nearly enough tryouts, and they will still like try out three guys. One guy will have bad communication, which anybody who's been on a team knows it's just like a no, no matter how good your aim is. Then there'll be another guy who's like yet who is like a great aimer, is like decent comms, and then like a third guy who's just like he's super reliable, nice to be around, great to practice with, no ego problems, but like can't hit a shot.
Sure.
It's like, and then you always pick from one of those three, and it's like, what are the odds that you found a guy who's going to be a pro player out of the three players that you tried out?
Sure.
Like basically zero. You're going to have extreme luck to have one player on your team that's a star. So I think that with the Stewie approach of like trying to get as many opportunities as you possibly can, not settling and staying on a team that's not good enough to keep it moving is the absolute best way to create your own luck in that regard. And players like that are players that stand out to me. Um, so that's definitely a red thread there, and that's something that I think we're missing definitely in NA with what people who DM me sometimes. They don't even know what server work is. They don't know how to set up a default. They don't know how to start talking to a team. And I don't mean that to say that to bash them. I just think, fuck, like it's such a shame that there's not enough leadership there to be like, this is literally, you get into the server, here are our default positions, here are calls, how our calls are going to look. Let's go over callouts first. Let's
Sure.
build two defaults. Let's build a strat and a fake from the strat, and then let's build a CT side, and then let's start playing. And like they don't know how to do that, and it's such a shame because some of them do have a good fundamental understanding of the game, but just like absolutely no experience and absolutely no one around with experience at all.
Sure. It's great that you mentioned Stu. I actually had a question about that lined up. Before we go there, though, although like the track history of broadcast talent going into coaching is pretty spotty. The results aren't amazing across the board. But could you see yourself? Well, yes, yeah, that's you're right. Could you see yourself?
Moses
was
a bad
coaching?
coach. Anko was a bad coach. These guys don't know. Like they're totally over.
Yeah.
I have to. It's like the results speak for themselves. And I've been offered to coach as well, and I just turned it down. I've been offered to coach a team that was tier 1 at the time, and I turned it down because it's broadcast talent constantly overrate like how apt they are at being able to analyze the game at an incredibly high level. Where like the reality is we spend most of our time figuring out how to be good broadcast talent first, and as much information on the side that we can get is really great. But it's like when Simple says like broadcast talent don't know anything about Counter-Strike, it's like that's fine that you say that. Like, you know, we're not getting paid 40 grand a month to study the game. Simple, I could probably teach you how to do an interview better, honestly, as like talent. So it's really important that people like respect their roles, and
there's levels to the shit.
There's levels to the shit, and like the analysts out there that are working right now that don't have like big brands and personalities are doing an excellent job and could probably run circles around most desks. But as soon as they stop being able to dedicate 100% of their time to studying the game with a team in practice and stay in Discord and talk to them all night, their knowledge is going to expire, evaporate so fast. You have to keep updating all the time. So I think it's really hard, and that's why talent, like, you get overrated because they're the only public people you hear talking about the game at a marginally deep level, and so you know you start to believe it yourself a little bit, and then I think that's why you take an opportunity like that. But I will always be a fake YouTube coach and not a real one.
Well, not only that as well, like part of running a team from a coaching point of view is about communication, not only just to individuals but the group as a whole. As you were saying, there's different characteristics for different players, and you don't know necessarily whether the star player is going to be super mild mannered or really egotistical, or whatever it is. The question I had for you though is, could you see yourself, if there was some like fantasy world existing as like a one-on-one coach? Could you like see yourself just helping out individual players, like gain those extra edges, that extra level of understanding that you have from watching stupid amounts of games of many teams, like random Asian teams that are just coming to events you want to know a little bit more about? Could you see you perhaps a niche in the market within an already super niche market that Counter-Strike doesn't really respect anyway? Could you see yourself fulfilling that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's, you know, maybe one day or something like that. But it's just a matter of time allocation. I think that like with the projects that I have, like for example, the reason that I started my YouTube channel was because I was individually helping people finish KZ maps. And then I thought, well, if I make a YouTube video, I can help whoever watches the video as opposed to everyone individually walk through the map. And so the one-on-one coaching and training is going to be way better. I can identify exactly what you need and then like help you work through things. And anybody up to a level that I played at or even above that, I can, even though I don't have the same level of detail and nuance as a top level pro talking about top level CS, can very easily help somebody get through to main, you know, get to the point where they're like a super solid fundamental player. I know what's wrong and that kind of thing, but it doesn't really make sense based on how much time I have to try that.
Sure. Back onto the Stewie 2K conversation point, I think you made some really fantastic points, specifically at the end, about how he couldn't be a primary IGL. He was a great supportive IGL. He couldn't be the primary AWP, but he was a great supportive piece. Once the dust has settled around, I think once maybe perhaps some people have forgotten about the Starbucks kind of instance and perhaps forgotten about how everything was handled on the way out the door. Do you think there is a place for him still in the like the North American scene? Where would you like to see him come back at if he was to make a return?
It's a great question. I don't know, because like that, EG Bridge is so just on fire that I don't think it's way back in that, and they're sort of withholding so much of the support within NA that if you're not in there, it's sort of like, what do you do?
Oh, it's a fucking disaster. You have a talent pipeline of teams that can't play at the same events of your main team who are shitting the bed when they go to these big events. It doesn't make any sense.
Like EG Black probably would have qualified to the major,
100%.
So it's a shame. But I don't really know. I also don't know, like, Stewie has actually excellent comms and an excellent support IGL for sure. I don't really see him being an excellent teacher or anything like that. Like, he's still also only 25, so he might not feel like he's even close to the thought of wanting to coach, even though he's sort of like done everything you need to do in CS. He's got a trophy sliding bar in HLTV,
sure.
right? Like, it might be hard for him, like, ego-wise, to ever come back like all the way down there, especially at 25. And communication in terms of teaching people how to play the game, I don't really know that that's going to be his strong suit. Like, I'm a much better teacher than I am a player, and I think that he's a much better player than he is a teacher, even though he has the knowledge. So I think basically, I guess if I had to predict a route, it would be like he tries to play on a new organization that comes into the scene based on him wanting to switch back because he has so much brand power. He picks a litter from the litter of players that he can to try to form a roster, or he tries a team in Europe. Then he tries to play as a player. Then he potentially ends up in a situation where he can, Stanislaw and EG Black or whatever it was, play with lower level teams to help them. Pay him whatever the fuck he wants to like play with these players to like build up your rosters to like bring him to the main lineup with no intention of bringing him up.
Do you think EU, like the Europe, is a realistic landing zone for someone like Stewie? I think personally, just like you could remember in the final games for the EG and Liquid days, like you'd see him just like run down into connector on overpass and just try and get a pick with Naught because he wanted to force the opportunities. Do you reckon Europe would be something that would be, if you're a European team, like edge of the top 30 zone, would you consider that as an opportunity?
Top 30, I think fair. Like top 30, there's probably a place, but I don't. It's kind of what I said about like tryouts. Like, would you pick Stewie with the thought of winning your next major? Probably not at this point. Like, it might be too risky. I think that like he would probably be particularly motivated to make it the right move if he was coming back on a second chance. There's just no way. I just don't have that sort of window into his mind.
Sure,
like I don't know, because we know like it was already surprised that a person like him who was a pug star was able to win a major and a Grand Slam and show that he was like a truly professional player in Tier 1. So it might be just as surprising to see that he could make a comeback. But how many comebacks have we had? We have Hobbit, JKS. There's one or two more players that have made after a giant Device after a giant break.
Config and then, after numerous breaks.
Yeah, after numerous. But that's one hand that you're counting these players on. So when someone makes a comeback for me, it's just let's see what you show us. Otherwise, I'm not gonna if Guardian couldn't make a comeback, I'm not gonna give most people a chance.
True. Yeah. Right. Let's. You mentioned some of your content earlier, talking about KZ. I must admit, before I saw you on the big screens casting the games, when I heard the name Launders, I thought, isn't that guy who did like KZ tutorials? And I vividly remember you like doing like weird circle jumps and stuff, and that's where I remember your name. That's where I remember it first. So you said you started your content as like content so people could come and find it and forever understand it. How did you go from like a solid KZ player and an NA CSGO player to this like sensational caster that you are now, doing finals, doing big events all across Europe and the world? What was that path like?
Yeah, I think it's just a path. I think it's sort of like the Stewie path without the talent. So I would say like when I started, I got opportunities because people said that I had a good voice, and I think if I want to be objective with myself, I think my two skills were that I was good at explaining things and I had a good voice. That didn't make me good broadcast talent, even though I think those are 2/3 of the pie and a really good foundation. So I learned how to be a better presenter. I've become better at just at everything slowly over time. And I'm at the point now where if I walk out, when I walk out the Blast Fall final, 12,000 people in the Royal Arena, not a shred of nervous. I'm not even nervous at all. Like I don't care anymore. I could just go out and be myself, which is the ultimate goal. Where to be the best player, you've got to be like ready, locked in, and every round you're not even blinking. But to
Sure.
be the best commentator, you have to be incredibly prepared, but then relax when the game starts. And then just make it a story, make it fun when it needs to be. And if you're constantly tense and trying to make it the best cast ever, you lose that. And I think that's something that I've learned over the years, and something that's probably that people don't really notice about what makes commentary difficult, because it seems so lackadaisical, right? Like,
Sure.
oh, the best commentators, they're so charismatic and they're just so chill. Like, how do they do it? But they're really thinking a lot about how to be prepared, but just enough, and then relax. And I think that that's sort of helped me on my journey. But finding scrawny, figuring out different ways in which to be a better broadcast talent, as opposed to just being a good analyst or just being a good voice. And then working with Blast, honestly, they gave us so many finals and the chances to have all that experience in front of big crowds. So that's a big reason that we've done well as well.
So, along with your YouTube channel, I noticed a lot of that content on there nowadays I think I see a lot of it as evergreen. There's stuff you can go back and it still stands up today. You also have the Boxer brand. How much time does the Boxer brand take up these days? Like, where is it ranked in your priorities? I saw you just had like a new merch drop, right? Or you've restocked something. Yeah, where are your priorities at currently? Obviously, casting is probably still towards the top, of course, but YouTube, is that something you're going to go back for? Is evergreen content something you aim for? Yeah, what are your plans?
Yeah, lots of good stuff there. So like number one, evergreen content has always been a prerogative for me. Like since I started my YouTube channel, I've always could see from the beginning that like YouTube will constantly give your chances, give your content more pushes over the years if it's still good. So I was like, I don't really like the idea of making topical content. I've never made nade content. I've never made map change stuff. I'll talk about updates and things like that now, but most of the time, all of my best and most the videos I'm most proud of, like Swag's crosshair placement or like a game review. I see you've done a game review as well. I really enjoy doing stuff like that. But those things that last a long time, that's what I really like a lot. I like the idea of classic. I like the idea of staple. I like the idea of longevity. Maybe it's because I'm afraid of death. I don't know. And then outside of that, when it comes to Boxer, that's probably third down the priority list. So right now, commentary makes me the most money. It does the most for my brand. It's the thing I've worked really hard to get good at, and it's the thing that I think is the most important that I'm good at for the sake of my brand or whatever. Being, delivering something good to Counter-Strike. I think that's that's my overarching number one priority, is to be good at things I do that give back to this game. So commentary is the most important, and then after that it's YouTube, because I see myself doing YouTube long after I'm done casting, and then I see myself doing Boxer even longer than that. But in terms of time, I'm really like a fraud CEO. Like I just talk to as many people as possible. I'm like, make something cool for me. Like Taylor does all the designs. Like I had the anime ad done by someone cool in CSGO. So I find my job is just like reaching out to all the coolest people I find and just like have them like make something cool so we can like do something cool together. But doesn't take me much time, honestly.
Fair enough. Fair enough. In terms of like content on the internet, I consider myself a bit of a lurker. I sit in like a lot of Discords, but I never interact. I've definitely subbed to a couple of Patreons. So I don't think I've ever used any of like the tier rewards or whatever. In terms of content on YouTube at the moment, if making content is your second priority, when you have downtime, are there people you're going to? Are there like go-to content creators in the Counter-Strike space or beyond that you're looking at either for inspiration or entertainment?
Yeah, YouTube is my my life in terms of my free time. If my girlfriend's not home and I'm just by myself and I can just like order some food and have a beer, or I'm in between doing these interviews that I'm doing, I'm literally go to my front page of YouTube. I'm thinking about what's on my front page. I'm thinking about titles. I'm thinking about thumbnails. I'm watching content, everything from like, fucking hiking videos in the mountains of Chile, or stuff about money and how the dollar is going to explode, or then things about podcast about Counter-Strike like HLTV Confirmed, or things like, and then I'm sort of reshuffling all the time. Like I'm changing some of my recommended stuff to not interested because I want to go somewhere new. And I'm thinking about what works on YouTube all the time. And I watch lots of different things. I watch tons of chess content. And then I watch some of the regular content creators, a lot Richard Lewis's stuff. I watch Mahone stuff. I watch Vu's videos. I have to admit are actually kind of good. And then I watch Nart's videos. He did a really cool documentary style video recently as well.
Nice. Right. So just a couple things on the RMR and the major that's just coming up. I just want a couple quick fire. Just like where's your head at on certain teams? First off, are there any teams that didn't make it that were like a super shock to you? One that will stand out is Cloud9, but are there any other teams that didn't make it to the RMR that you kind of expected to be there, or were looking forward to see how they matched up?
Yeah, good question. Let me just go ahead and look at the teams list for the Europe RMR.
It's okay.
Yeah, so I guess the obvious ones are going to be VP.
Oh yeah.
And then yeah, honestly it was VP and then in Cloud9. Nothing else actually stood out. I think obviously Fnatic's route was easy, but hey, look, they won what they were supposed to win and they qualified. Yeah. Same thing with Heroic. They had an easy route, but like they were going to qualify anyway and they won their games. A shout out to Enter the Breach obviously because they made it to Legends and like it's brutal. It's brutal out there. Everyone knows it's tough with these RMRs. I think Virtus Pro was just like them getting limited the RMR stage. First of all, it's just like when's the last time James didn't qualify to a major, no matter what the circumstances. And so for it to be at this one where like Apex, Gamer Legion, Into the Breach, Bad News Eagles are 3rd through 6th, like whoa, that's an abject failure for them. Yeah. So the hot swap of Chiron, of course, it's just like what the fuck was that? So,
there was some obviously key underperformances at the event as well. FaZe scraping through with that last chance qualifier spot. I got to admit, I actually completely misunderstood what that last chance qualifier was because even when I did a preview for the event, I was like, that's fine. Like there's 3 teams from either side, so like they're gonna make it through regardless. I didn't know it was just one. That blew me away. So FaZe obviously was a key underperformer. Are there any out and out favorites for this event? Because it's quite hard to put my finger on the pulse of who is actually going to win it. Vitality just won the last event, but can you trust them to win the major in Paris?
No. I mean, the last time a team won 2 events in a row would have been G2 World Final into, last groups. Did they win Kato after that? Yeah, they won Kato as well. So there's not really a track record of teams winning 2 events in a row. There's not these last 6 months. There hasn't been a team that's been clearly number 1. Even after FaZe won Antwerp were the best team last year, they disappeared for 6 months and then came back at the end. They didn't qualify to Rio, so you can't count on anybody at the moment. And I think it's sort of like it's going to be who's good on the month. Like a lot of teams are trending in the right direction. Navi's trending in the right direction, but does NPL shit his pants in playoffs? I don't know. I don't really have a lot of stock in that. FaZe, they'll get it together for the major. They made it through, so they're going to be good. They're definitely going to be in playoffs. Navi are almost certainly going to be in playoffs. G2, in my opinion, are my favorites. They'll be in playoffs, even though they've been spotty recently. Don't think it matters too much. They've got the perfect pieces, and Nico's got more motivation than any other player in this whole event, like bar none, besides ZywOo, I guess, but maybe even more so, Nico's just seen it all. So I think that ZywOo, he could finish the event, not win the major, and still have like an unbelievable career in CSGO. He's never lower than top 2. Whereas, Nico, it's like he's the last guy to not get a major.
Sure.
And so maybe I want it for him more than he does. I don't know.
How do you rank Liquid's chances going into this?
Terrible. I mean, I don't think there's any chance they win, and I think there's a very low chance they make playoffs this time, personally.
Okay, fair enough. Rip NA. Right, coming towards the end of this interview, we're going to do a super quick fire edition of one of my favorite pieces of content that you have, but like all great artists, I've stolen it as my own and I've bastardized it. So we're going to do a quick unlucky or bad team edition going into this major, or rather going into this major. Ironically, this one didn't make it. Quick 30 seconds, unless he says something outrageous and I want you to explain more. Cloud9, what do they do next? Are they unlucky or bad, rather, and what's the next step?
Oh, okay. They're bad, and it's because Nafany has 0 resolve. They have a good system. I don't agree with Maui. I think they have a good system. They proved it versus lots of top teams, but they just simply don't have the mental.
Okay. Unlucky or bad, FaZe?
FaZe, I think, unlucky or actually lazy. So bad.
Oh,
I'm gonna go with bad again
okay,
because
right, okay.
I think they literally lost Rio and everything and spotty results because they've been lazy, woke up too slowly, thought that they were supposed to be the champs, are coming into the most competitive era in Counter Strike and just not playing 100% every day. But if they did, shoe in for most of these events.
I was ready to fight you there, but I agree. Terrible before this. Unlucky or bad, NIP?
Um, bad. I think everyone's just bad, honestly. Like, at least NIP are getting better, but like they kind of have a pretty. I think Alexi needs to do a better job. Like they have Config, who is getting better, but for a while was just playing some of his worst CS ever.
Mm.
They have Brolin, who was actually truly, when he moves to the team, the best Swedish talent outside of NIP at the time. They had the pieces. They can do better. They can do better than they're doing now. So I'm gonna say that.
Okay. And finally, Heroic. Going into this event, they did 3-0, but unlucky or bad? How they been?
Unlucky.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they, I guess it is on merit that they lost, but I think that unlucky in the sense that they had like the hard side of the bracket, got through two of the really, really most tough games in playoffs, and then just lost to Vitality, who were just fucking, super momentum and got their revenge win. Heroic have had a great time overall. I personally think every other team is more scared of Heroic at this major than anybody else. So that's why I'll say I think this win at Rio would have been huge for them coming into Paris. And I think they want to be able to end CSGO with people talking about them as one of the best teams of all time. They're sort of so close to that with their second place finishes, but they haven't got it. It's hard for me to say unlucky, but I think if there was one, I would just say that.
Okay. It's interesting you didn't mention Heroic and your out and out favorites. So going into this event, like, do you expect them making a deep run?
Yeah.
I imagine most teams would be super happy if they got knocked out in quarterfinals, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think my final in my head is G2 Heroic if they're not on the same side of the bracket, and then it depends where Navi and FaZe are as well. I think those 4 teams are just the teams that I think I would bet my life that one of them will be in finals.
Okay.
I should do that. No one asked me to do that, so I don't have to. But
there's a strange morbid link between throughout this interview. All right, one last thing before I let you go. Last event coming up, obviously, for Counter Strike. Who was the best North American player throughout the entirety of Counter Strike? Go.
Yeah, it's Twist for me for sure.
Okay.
I think that Elige is very close, but I've just heard so many things about Elige as a teammate and stuff, or I'm just like, nah, I haven't really heard that change either. So I can't, that even though it's conjecture, I don't like openly talk about exactly what I've heard. I have to put some stock into that as long as the results also follow
Sure.
where they're subpar, not exactly what you want. Whereas like someone like Stewie, every team he's joined, he's made them better despite the reviews about his personality. And Twist is just got basically a flawless reputation. I've heard he was like an emo player when he started when he was younger. No one wanted to play with him, but now he's like the most disciplined rifler. He's got his double Grand Slam. He's done it in Europe and North America, and he's not just been carried in either team. He was the best player during the Grand Slam run. He was one of the best players on FaZe. Had some iconic plays, in big moments. So for me, it's Twist.
Fair enough. Thank you very much for joining me on this, Launders. Enjoy the rest of your day. I look forward to seeing you at future events.
Great questions. Thanks, man.
Thanks for making it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Give it a share if you enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of your day.